still in the... Aha. We are live.
We are live. Okay. Hello, everyone. Emma, can you hear? So we had a little technical difficulty in that our intended moderator seemed not to make it, so I'm stepping in to save the day here. Okay, Emma, can you hear us okay?
That frown probably means no.
Okay, I can hear you, Doug. I can hear Roifield. I can hear myself. How about now, Emma? Can you hear us?
I think Emma might need to reboot her machine. Just a reboot, and you know what, it'll be fine.
All right. Yeah, let's get started. Oh, Emma, you're muted. That's why.
There we go.
You seem
Hello,
to be
Emma. Can you hear us now?
Okay. Well, maybe Roifield and Doug, we should just get started.
Because the first topic is actually US anyway. But so yeah, we're going to start.
Alrighty.
And this is somewhat of a live recording of a podcast that I do every fortnight, every 2 weeks, or bi-weekly, as the Americans would say. This is Midatlantic, where I look at US and UK contemporary news. And the idea is I have one pundit from the US and one from the UK, and we compare and contrast. So I will put this out as a podcast. So I'm going to go 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to Midatlantic, the show where we look at the news and the views from one side of the Atlantic from the perspective of the other. I'm Roifield Brown, who is in Birmingham in England. Today, I'm joined by TV pundit and political consultant Doug Levy in San Francisco, and by the journalist Emma Burnell in London, who's having problems hearing us at the moment. In a week that has seen Liverpool win the delayed Premier League season, we ask if Donald Trump actually wants to win in 2020. Doug, when Donald Trump ran for president in 2016, he didn't have hard and fast plans for governing. The campaign was to be an advertising brochure for his businesses to open up new branding opportunities, but he won. It's been obvious that he has no real plans for his second term. When asked this week, he talked about Hillary Clinton and the wall. These are all tropes from 2016. With a pandemic that has killed 120,000 Americans, and with 33 million Americans out of work, or 1 in 5, and with even more Americans asking for racial justice, why can't the president pivot to be the consoler and action man in chief?
He doesn't have it in his DNA. This is a man who ran his businesses by bullying people, basically, and bluster. And he's been a successful marketer, but he's never actually run a successful business. And he has never had an actual strategy to operate as president. I mean, the fact that he won caught him by surprise. So they had no transition plan underway, which was kind of mind-boggling because we actually have a pretty formal process for transition planning in the United States. And his team blew it off because they didn't think they were going to win. And then they won and they still didn't take it seriously. And they're still not taking it seriously.
Doug, you said something really interesting, that he is a marketer. So marketers are supposed to understand about brands. In what way do you think, from Donald Trump's perspective, that he will say that he's enhanced the American brand throughout the world in the last 4 years?
Not the word that I would use.
Well, but the question is, though, that he is a marketer. If Donald Trump fundamentally has any skill, it is putting his name on things, whether, as somebody says, Trump steaks, it's Trump hotels, it's Trump whatever. So he has some skill for that.
The problem is that he was able to build his businesses by finding new suckers to sell to. And, because he didn't get a lot of repeat customers except for Deutsche Bank, which, go figure. People caught on to his BS pretty quickly. All the people that lost money, again, except for Deutsche Bank. Now that he's president, that doesn't work, because whether he likes it or not, he is responsible for the duties of president and the health and welfare of all the people of the United States. And he still doesn't understand that that's actually a job that he has to do. It's not just about bluster and marketing.
But is it a job he has to do? I mean, he hasn't, and he's largely got away with it. And I think if this year hadn't been quite the insane apocalypse that it has been, he might well have got away with it twice.
Well,
Yeah,
arguably, wise heads always said from the start of his presidency that you'll see the true Donald Trump when there is a real crisis that happens, which is not something which he's manufactured. It's not something which is truly in opposition to him. And this is the president that people voted for, isn't it? That somebody who fundamentally doesn't understand actually what he's dealing with, what the country's going through.
Can I just
Emma,
offer my apologies for my slow start? I had a problem with my computer, but hopefully everything is okay now. And so sorry everyone, and hello.
You're fine. We've got you in full moving Technicolor now.
Oh my brain.
He just held a rally indoors in Tulsa, packed with thousands of people in an indoor facility, and much fewer people came than were expected. Emma, is this Trump fatigue or is this COVID-19?
It's probably a little bit of both. I think that he still has a certain amount of enthusiastic fan base that aren't going anywhere. But at the end of the day, despite many of them protesting that they would die for him, quite a few people decided not to. So, and very sensibly, which isn't something you often say about Trump supporters. So I think, people weren't willing to. I mean, he could have held an outdoor rally. He could have held a different type of rally, but he was kind of trying to project an image that COVID was over. And what he managed to do was project the opposite.
Especially since now more than a dozen of the Secret Service officers who were there have had to isolate. I believe it's 8 of his staff members now.
Yeah.
One of the reporters who covered it, and we don't know about the people who attended yet, but Tulsa's had a huge increase in COVID cases in the last 10 days. We won't see the Trump effect probably for another week, but it's almost inevitable.
Yes, because this is the first large gathering of people, and we indoors, and we know that these are, things that cause upticks in COVID cases. The science isn't complete on everything, but that bit we're pretty confident about.
Well, we see it in the numbers.
We do. Doug, Trump is actively keeping the economy from recovering. Ever since the pandemic forced the American economy into a deep dive, the president and congressional Republicans have resisted using the full power of the federal government to help. He continues to talk about the stock market, which is not the real economy. In terms of just him getting to November and saying that the economy is roaring back, why don't he and the Republicans pour billions, nay, trillions of dollars into the economy to mitigate the recession?
Well, putting my policy wonk hat on, I'm glad that that's not what they're just instinctively doing, because right now it would probably not help. We're going to see in the next few days, we started seeing it this past week, that the economy is not going to function if people can't go out safely. And Trump has been trying for the past month to persuade people that the virus is gone, that the only reason for the new numbers is we're testing more. Pence even repeated that at the White House task force briefing, which, I mean, the numbers simply don't support it. He even said that the death rates are down. No, the death rates are up. The US has among the worst death rates. And even if we had good death rates, it's still hundreds of people every day dying. So people are not going out. I was supposed to go to a conference in Texas in a few weeks. That's not going to happen. Bars and restaurants are now reclosing in Texas and Florida and probably 3 or 4 other places very soon. The virus is out of control. Here in California, where it had been in reasonably good control, it's not going well at all. Things are going to come to a crashing halt, whether Trump likes it or not. People are, as we saw in Tulsa, people aren't going to go out there afraid. That's halting the economy no matter what he says.
Doug, just on Texas, I forget the name of the governor there, but he is, yeah, so he's looking at locking things back down again. Why isn't he being much more vocal about the lack of guidance, support from the federal government?
Because he is a Trump acolyte. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is that Texas and Florida especially, Arizona to a large extent as well, Georgia, some of the other southern states, places where Trump has tremendous support and where Republicans who support Trump are in charge, because the president said this is no big deal, you need to open up again. They opened prematurely. They opened even before the White House recommendations said to, because the president's task force issued the recommendations and the president said, don't wait for that. Well, public health folks said, we're going to pay for this. That's exactly what's happening. But if they go against the president, they're not going to get reelected. Now, the question here is, who is going to be putting the public health of their constituents and their neighbors and friends ahead of their political future? We've seen a few governors do that already. Ohio, North Dakota, New York to some extent, New Jersey, Connecticut, Maryland. Texas is getting there. Abbott is starting to sound like he's taking this seriously, because his public health officials are saying, we literally can't, if the pace continues another 10 days and you need to get into the hospital with a heart attack or a stroke or a car crash or anything, there will be no room.
What is this going to do to Texas come November? Let's say if this election was next week, would the bottom fall out of the Republican vote? Would Texas go from vaguely purplish to swinging Democrat, do you think?
No. The polls are indicating that this is definitely helping the Democrats, but you really have a culture war here. And I think some of the people that voted for Trump wanted that, and we're getting it. I mean, I'm actually working on a blog post, which I think will be up either later today or tomorrow, really looking at some of the denial politics. Palm Beach County had a hearing on a mask ordinance a couple days ago.
That was stunning. The whole world has been watching that.
I mean, but it wasn't just that one lady with the red shirt. It was person after person after person.
What you mean, Doug?
But that's the way these people really believe.
That's the thing. There's people, person after person after person after person making the most insane points in public,
and they believe it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's so Orwellian in a way. To completely not just tell lies, but believe lies and make those lies central to your being.
And it is truly contagious, because I'm in a very blue area, But even here, there are people who are questioning whether wearing a mask is somehow inhibiting their freedom.
Well, that's what I was going to come on to say, is that this is where you have the collision of supposed free rational thought with, I would say, very juvenile notions of freedom, and freedom that comes with no responsibility, because the mask is to protect other people. To hell with yourself.
Freedom.
Because we all are responsible citizens and we need to look after each other. So, Emma, Trump is mobilizing Democratic voters and demobilizing Republicans. Does Biden have to campaign at all?
Given Biden's tendency to mess things up, maybe it's better that he doesn't. He is a little gaffe prone, I believe is the word that's generally politely used. I mean, yes, there's nothing in the bag. We've just been talking about Texas. Texas is the endless tease for Democrats. Democrats always think they're going to, this time in Texas, never actually is.
Well, isn't Biden some 9 points up in Texas at the moment? Like Biden's leads are sizable just about everywhere, especially in these swing states.
If you drill down into the poll,
his lead is 14 points nationally, but in the swing states it's considerably closer, even though he does have leads in all the key ones. But it is June. There's a whole long way.
Almost July.
I know it feels like it as well. But yeah, there's a long way to go. Trump's got the bully pulpit of the presidency. There's certainly still room for him to turn it around, though it is looking trickier and trickier. But I'm sorry, I'm just not going to believe it until I see it. I'm not doing that to myself again.
I need to jump in and quickly say to the people who are watching, you can actually ask us a question. The last 10 minutes or so, we're going to throw this out. So if you want to ask us a question, hit the ask a question link at the bottom of the screen. And then basically we'll spend the last 10 minutes doing that. I think it's about time that we forego America and basically went back over here, Emma. Keir Starmer has sacked Shadow Minister Rebecca Long-Bailey after she endorsed a tweet by the actress and Labour supporter Maxine Peake, suggesting that US police learned violent tactics from Israeli secret services, a claim she subsequently described as inaccurate. Has the ghost of anti-Semitism now been purged from the Labour Party because of Keir Starmer's swift action?
I think it's a good start. I mean, I think there are a number of things that you have to unpack with this story. First of all, Rebecca Long-Bailey was Starmer's opposition from the Corbynite left. So that put her into a particular position. So when he put her in his shadow cabinet, that was kind of a way of showing unity. You tend to put the people who are running against you in your shadow cabinet somewhere, because it then kind of tries to create. So for him to sack her is an awkward political position for him to be in, because he's been trying to have this unity message. But much stronger than his unity message has been, and the first thing he said when he was elected is, we are going to launch the ball of anti-Semitism. And he had to prove that, and he will continue to have to prove that. But what he was handed was a political opportunity to show exactly how much he means to do that, and he ruthlessly took it. And it was politically, there are arguments to be made that what Rebecca Long-Bailey did or didn't do wasn't a sackable offence. But if you're handed that much ammunition on a plate and a way of both distancing yourself from the biggest issue your party has, whilst at the same time building a really good contrast both to your predecessor, but also to the Prime Minister, who is failing to sack a minister who's done something considerably worse. I mean, that's just politics 101. Of course you take that opportunity.
Doug, question for you. Can we criticize, let's put aside exactly what was in the tweet just for now.
Because it was actually an interview in The Independent, by the way. So
yeah. So, yeah, Thank you for that, Emma. So it was an interview in Independent of which the actress then tweeted, and then Long Bailey then liked it. In effect, an endorsement.
Mm-hmm. She described her as an absolute diamond.
Yes.
And tweeted the interview, and that was given as an endorsement of the whole contents of the interview.
Is it possible for parties of the left to criticize the state of Israel and for that not to be perceived as anti-Semitic? Is it possible?
Of course it is.
It absolutely should be, and I think in normal times it is. The challenge that we have in the United States is that we have a president who is very closely aligned with some staunch right-wing, some people who are staunch supporters of the right wing in Israel. And in Trump's mind, there is no other position that is pro-Israel. Now, those of us who are not so keen on the right wing in Israel either tend to align on the Democratic side. But, there's Democrats who are extreme left supporters in Israel too. And the fact is, you can't solve problems by going to the walls. You've got to come to the middle and work together. And awareness of this anti-Semitism is really important, because the current administration in the U.S. has promoted a lot of anti-Semitic tropes. I mean, it's mind-boggling how much that has increased. But that's
one thing. Just on that, there's one thing I've never quite been able to understand with Trump. His son-in-law is Jewish, but then he's quite comfortable to get in bed with white nationalists who are virulently anti-Semitic. There is no nuanced difference between the state of Israel and then being Jewish. Like these people, half of them are in bed with the KKK. So I've never been able to understand how Trump can mix that up the way that he has. And
if you're completely devoid of values, you can do anything.
Yeah, I don't think he's in bed with the KKK because he is passionate about any of their beliefs, because I don't think he's passionate about anything except himself. And that's what it is. It's just simply ego, pure id.
And power.
Yeah. But that drive for power is driven by that selfish id. Sorry, I've got all psychological on you.
That's all right. You raise the intellectual level of our conversation, Emma. Boris Johnson's net favourability is up 6 points, an increase of 2 month in, month out. The Tories, the Conservative Party in the United Kingdom, are now leading, according to voting intentions, with 43% of the vote, and Labour are second with 36%. Emma, I thought Keir Starmer was doing really well. Everybody said he's coming. He's holding the government to task, Prime Minister's Question Time. But then also that the government have done so badly through the whole COVID-19 debacle. Well, there you go. Loaded. COVID-19 emergency, sorry. What is going on with the UK polls?
I mean, the thing is that it's going to take a really long time for Labour to turn things around, because we messed it up so badly last year and over the last 4 or 5 years. And in fact, longer than that, there was a report recently, which if you're interested in UK politics, I highly recommend you read. It's the Labour Together report, which was looking into what went wrong at the election in 2019. This is a fairly standard thing that parties do. The Labour Party didn't do this in 2017 because they'd done better than expected. So they thought they'd got everything right. And actually that masked a lot of ongoing, really deep-seated problems. One of the reasons that Labour did quite well in 2017 was that people didn't think they were going to win. So they felt it was quite an easy way to have a kick at the government to give Labour a vote. And if enough people think that, you might accidentally go forward. But so there were organizational problems. Lots and lots of people were hired and promoted into positions that they weren't suited for, but because they had the right politics, or what was considered the right politics within the Corbyn government. So a lot of people, both in terms of politicians, but also the backroom staff, who just weren't up to scratch. They weren't up to it. And it came to a head when Labour crashed to one of their worst election defeats ever. And so, yeah, but the answer is, why aren't we doing better? Well, we're doing better than we were, but voters aren't going to forget that immediately. It's going to take time. And Keir Starmer hasn't really done much yet. I mean, that's not his fault. He's not been there very long, and he's been stuck in his house. But, it is going to take time. We are going to have to go through, there's going to be some very, very painful moments coming, not least from the Equalities and Human Rights Commission into institutional anti-Semitism reports.
We need to go to questions because we are running out of time. This is from Caroline Webber. When do you think Joe Biden will announce his vice presidential choice, and who do you advise that it should be? By the way, Ray, you should be reading these out, shouldn't you? I'm sorry, I'm doing your job. Doug, why don't you answer that, and then Ray, why don't you take up the reading out the questions afterwards?
No, okay. He should pick whoever he wants, basically, but he likely is going to pick somebody who will be younger and female, and
it can't pick somebody older, Doug. It'd be impossible. He's 105.
And most of us are speculating with good reason that he will choose an African-American woman. There are many who are highly qualified. My money's on Kamala Harris, the former Attorney General of California, who's a senator, the junior senator from California, who has just been a superstar in the Senate. She has really stepped to the forefront on the racial justice issues of the last few weeks. Her speeches on the Senate floor have been stunning.
Doug, how much of that is... I don't want to say opportunism, but seeing which way the wind is blowing. Somebody like Stacey Abrams has been fighting that fight for some time, hasn't she?
Well, sure. So Tammy Duckworth, the veteran who's a senator from Illinois, has been trying to get some attention to be in the running and deserves to be considered. Elizabeth Warren has been talked about, although I don't think that would be a good choice for Biden. Val Demings, the former police chief of Orlando, Florida, who is in the House, she'd be a really interesting choice. I don't think the right choice, but we've had a lot of qualified people. It's a great crop of up-and-coming leaders for the Democrats. But my money's on Harris. Stacey Abrams, I think, is a little too far to the left to bring in the votes that Biden needs. Harris can do that.
Next question, Ray.
All right, next question. This is a good one. How do we change the perceived thought in parts of the U.S. that a mask means lack of freedom instead of caring for others? It seems like other countries have this figured out, but we just aren't there in the U.S. Rebecca, who asked the question, is in Maryland, for context. Maybe it is civics education or greater understanding of science at early ages, but there must be something deeper underlying this. And I'll just throw in my 2 cents is when I just go out for a walk on the street, I wear a mask, even though I know that I'm not going to be in contact with people, just as a sign of respect that I care about you and I'm sending a message. So yeah, I can get behind this question as well.
Unfortunately, it's a simple question of leadership. And the only reason we are having trouble getting people to wear masks is that the president has actually told people to not wear masks. And I've had friends who literally have been shouted at because they're wearing masks, and people have said, "Oh, you must hate the president." Has nothing to do with that.
I don't wear masks outdoors, but I always wear them when I go to the supermarket or what have you, which I think is the reasonable balance. Outdoors.
If you're going to be within 6 feet or 10 feet, really, of another person, wear the damn mask.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the supermarket where that's going to happen. When I'm wandering my daily walk, which takes me up for a loop around Leighton Orient Football Stadium, is not going to bump into anybody. Not least because A, they're not playing at home, and B, it's Leighton Orient. That's a football joke for the UK fans there. But I think you're right, Doug. It's about the visibility of people doing this who are telling us to do this. And that's where if you think about where the government's COVID response really crashed in popularity, it was because of the Dominic Cummings story, because the people in charge were not following their own rules.
The other thing I would say, again, I always say this, so I do apologise for old listeners of the show, but as a student of history, right, there is deep within the cultural DNA of America is this idea of a certain type of freedom. And it annoys Europeans when Americans say freedom, 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 as if to say that in the United Kingdom, we are not free. By any indices, we are as free. And arguably, I would say, freer, because we're not shackled by a one notion idea of what freedom is. Freedom from a European perspective. Emma?
We have the freedom to get sick here.
Exactly.
Being bankrupted.
Which goes to the heart of the reason why wearing a mask in the United Kingdom, even though we have a right-wing government, is not a political issue the way that it is in the United States. Because what freedom means to the average right-leaning American is I can do whatever I want. And that's the reason why us as Europeans and really the rest of the world don't understand American notions of freedom and having guns. That is antithetical to our ideas of community and responsibility. If you understand that, then you understand to a small degree those people in that town hall in Florida, because it's their freedom to go and do whatever they want, even though it's somewhat hypocritical because they all wear seatbelts in their cars. They all drive on the right side of the road. They don't just say to hell with everything.
Some of them do.
Anyway, Ray, why don't you go through the questions?
Okay, I think we'll have time for just one more question. We've got 2 minutes left. And oh gosh, where did it go? Okay, we have already started to see the statistical link between Fox News viewership and rising COVID rates. Didn't know that piece of data.
There have been multiple studies on that, actually. It's very clear.
What, if any, will the consequences be for right-wing news and Rupert Murdoch in 1 minute?
Do you want me to take this as the journalist on board? Rupert Murdoch, probably very little, almost certainly nothing himself. The guy's rich and he's 80 million years old and he's married to Jerry Hall. I mean, he's all right. But Fox News killing their own audience doesn't seem like a great marketing strategy to me. So I think there probably will be repercussions, and they won't be immediate. They certainly won't be this side of the election. But I do think that longer term, Fox News will have to think about where it picks its cultural battles. Not that it won't pick them, but it might pick them a bit more carefully in ways that simply just, if at the end of the day, what matters is the bottom line, don't kill the people you're advertising to.
Just quickly, what Fox News is, and I'm hardly unique in saying this, it's your angry, belligerent old uncle at Thanksgiving or at Christmas. It's the neighbor 2-3 doors down, that angry man. And there will still be money in pumping a message to that declining audience. So you could actually see that Fox News can continue to peddle its message with a declining amount of Americans that it's actually speaking to, but that message just getting sharper and sharper and sharper. It'll just become less relevant. Because Fox News is in such a silo, what Fox News has not understood is something like Black Lives Matter. It's not understood, and it has understood the changing demographics of America, but it hasn't understood what that means for America going forward. And actually, it doesn't really need to, because as long as you've got 20, 30, 40, 50 million Americans that believe in that message, you can still make money out of that.
Their money is based on denying what's actually happening and misrepresenting.
I think as much as I and our listeners would like to hear more, we have to cut it here. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. Thank you
so much.
Yes, thank you, Roifield, Doug, and Emma. I'll see you all at later sessions. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.